The moment Vivienne collapsed on the marble floor she just scrubbed, clutching her swollen belly, her husband Marcus didn't even look up from kissing his mistress. What he didn't know was that the poor maid, gasping for breath, owned the very mansion he thought belonged to him. And in exactly 48 hours, his entire world would shatter in ways he couldn't imagine. Hello friends, welcome to Stories by Jason. Before we start, please do not forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved ones. Also, please let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The crystal chandelier sparkled overhead as Vivienne's knees hit the cold marble floor, her 8-month pregnant belly making the descent agonizing. The bucket of soapy water sloshed, soaking through her plain gray uniform dress, the kind Marcus insisted she wear every single day. Through the French doors of the master bedroom she could hear laughter. His laughter, mingled with hers. Delilah's high-pitched giggle that grated like nails on glass. Vivienne, Marcus's voice boomed through the sprawling hallway of the 3-story mansion. The bathroom on the 2nd floor needs attention. Delilah says there are water spots on the mirror. Do it properly this time, or you won't eat tonight. Vivienne's hand instinctively went to her belly, where her daughter, she knew it was a girl, kicked softly, as if offering comfort. She closed her eyes for just a moment, steadying herself. The emerald engagement ring she'd once worn now sat in her pocket, replaced by the raw, reddened skin of hands that had scrubbed toilets, washed dishes, and folded another woman's lingerie for the past 3 months. Did you hear me? Marcus appeared at the top of the grand staircase, his 6-foot frame imposing in his tailored Armani suit. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw sharp, his gray eyes cold. This was the man she'd married 2 years ago in a ceremony that cost $500,000. The man who'd whispered promises of forever while sliding a platinum band onto her finger beneath a canopy of white roses. Yes, Marcus, Vivienne said softly, using the edge of the antique console table to pull herself upright. Every movement felt heavier now, her body exhausted not just from pregnancy but from the psychological warfare of her own home becoming her prison. Behind Marcus, Delilah appeared, a vision in designer silk, her platinum blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, her figure model-thin and draped in the emerald necklace that Vivienne had received for her last birthday. The 24-year-old woman smirked as she wrapped her arms around Marcus's waist, pressing her cheek against his back. She's so slow, darling, Delilah purred. Maybe we should hire real help. She's rather pregnant and useless, don't you think? Marcus's laugh was sharp. Oh, but where's the fun in that? Besides, Vivienne needs to earn her keep. She contributes nothing else to this household. Vivienne felt the familiar sting behind her eyes but refused to let tears fall. Not here. Not now. She'd cried enough in the first weeks of this nightmare, when Marcus had first brought Delilah home, introduced her as his business associate, and gradually revealed the affair. When he'd told Vivienne she was lucky he didn't throw her out on the street, that she should be grateful he was allowing her to stay under his roof. His roof, that's what he believed. I'll clean the bathroom right away, Vivienne murmured, gathering her cleaning supplies with trembling hands. As she climbed the stairs, each step a small mountain now, she could hear them retreating to the master bedroom, the door closing with a decisive click. Soon, there would be sounds she'd learned to block out, humiliations she'd learned to survive by disappearing into her own mind. The mansion was a masterpiece of modern architecture combined with classical elegance. Soaring ceilings, imported Italian marble, original Monet on the walls, a wine cellar worth more than most people's homes. Every room was a testament to wealth and taste. Marcus loved giving tour to his business associates, gesturing grandly at the custom woodwork, the infinity pool visible through floor-to-ceiling windows, the home theater with genuine leather recliners. I've built an empire, he would say, chest puffed with pride. This is what success looks like. Vivienne would serve drinks during these tours, invisible in her maid's uniform, watching men in expensive suits nod approvingly while their wives whispered behind manicured hands. None of them recognized her. Why would they? The last time Vivienne had attended social events in this circle, she'd been on Marcus's arm, dripping in diamonds, introduced as his beautiful wife. That felt like another lifetime. The bathroom was pristine already. Vivienne had cleaned it just yesterday, but she went through the motions anyway. Spray bottle, microfiber cloth, methodical circles on the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked like a ghost. Chestnut hair pulled back in a severe bun, no makeup, dark circles under hazel eyes that once sparkled with ambition and joy. She was 28 years old and felt ancient. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, the cheap prepaid one Marcus allowed her to keep for emergencies. But the text wasn't from Marcus. It was from a number with no name attached. Status report, Miss Ashford. The board is concerned. Shall we proceed with Phase 3? Vivienne's fingers flew across the screen, her reply swift and coded. Not yet. 48 hours. Everything is documented. She deleted the exchange immediately, then flushed the toilet for effect, letting Marcus think she was exactly where he wanted her. Broken, obedient, trapped. But Vivienne Ashford had never been trapped a day in her life. And in 48 hours, Marcus would learn the most expensive lesson of his existence. The afternoon descended into evening, the sky outside bruising purple and gold. Vivienne prepared dinner in the gourmet kitchen, another of her duties. Pan-seared Chilean sea bass, truffle risotto, roasted asparagus with hollandaise. The kind of meal Marcus would Instagram, tagging it #blessedlivingmybslife, never mentioning who'd actually cooked it. She heard them before they appeared. Delilah's heels clicking on hardwood, Marcus's deep voice discussing a major deal closing next week. Set the dining room, Marcus ordered without looking at Vivienne. We're having a guest. Who? Delilah asked, wrapping herself around him like expensive silk. Gregory Chen, remember, my college buddy who's now a venture capitalist. He's considering investing in my expansion plans. Vivienne's hand stilled on the serving platter. Gregory Chen. She knew that name very well, better than Marcus could possibly imagine. As she arranged the table settings in the formal dining room, another contraction rippled through her lower back. False labor, the doctor had said. Common in the final weeks, but these were getting stronger, closer together. Vivienne breathed through it, straightening the silverware with shaking hands. The doorbell's chime echoed through the mansion. Vivienne moved to answer it, but Marcus waved her away irritably. Stay in the kitchen. You look a mess. I'll get it. Through the doorway, Vivienne watched Marcus open the door with his practiced businessman smile. Gregory, come in, come in. Gregory Chen stepped inside, mid-40s, sharp suit, intelligent eyes behind rimless glasses. Those eyes swept the foyer and landed on Vivienne in the kitchen doorway. Something flickered across his face. Recognition. Confusion. It was gone in an instant. Marcus, Gregory said slowly, his voice careful. Beautiful home. Isn't it? Marcus beamed, ushering him toward the dining room. I've worked hard to build all this. Blood, sweat, and tears, my friend. Delilah appeared in a dress that probably cost $5,000, air-kissing Gregory on both cheeks. So wonderful to meet Marcus's friends. He speaks so highly of you. They settled at the table and Vivienne began serving, moving silently between courses. The conversation flowed around her. Markets, investments, opportunities. Marcus held court, gesturing with his wine glass, discussing his business acumen and strategic vision. Tell me, Marcus, Gregory said, cutting into his sea bass with surgical precision, this property, how long have you owned it? Purchased it about 3 years ago, Marcus lied smoothly. Right before I met Vivienne. Knew I was going places, wanted a home that reflected that. Vivienne's hands didn't shake as she refilled water glasses. 3 years ago, she'd inherited this house from her grandmother. Marcus had never paid a single mortgage payment, because there was no mortgage. The property had been in the Ashford family for 2 generations. Impressive, Gregory murmured. The Ashford estate, isn't it? Named after the original owners. Marcus waved dismissively. Previous owners, yeah. They sold to a development company I bought from them. The name just stuck. Vivienne returned to the kitchen, another contraction gripping her abdomen. She braced herself against the counter, breathing slowly. Not yet, she told herself. Not yet. Hold on a little longer. Her phone buzzed again. This time a different number. Legal is ready, PR is ready, security is ready. Just say the word V. She typed back, tomorrow night, 8 p.m., the gala. The gala. The annual Westbridge Charity Foundation event, the social event of the season, where the city's elite gathered to see and be seen, to donate millions and feel virtuous. Marcus had been preening about it for weeks, had bought himself a new tuxedo, had promised Delilah she could wear Vivienne's diamonds from the safe. What Marcus didn't know was that Vivienne Ashford was not just a random attendee of that gala. She was the foundation's largest donor and founding board member. And tomorrow night, she wouldn't be serving drinks. A crash from the dining room jolted her back to the present. She rushed in to find red wine spreading across the white tablecloth. Delilah had accidentally knocked over her glass, and it was running toward the edge, about to drip onto the Persian rug that had belonged to Vivienne's grandmother. Oh my God, I'm so clumsy, Delilah giggled, not moving to help. Vivienne, clean this up, quickly before it stains. Vivienne grabbed napkins, blotting frantically. As she leaned over the table, another contraction hit, stronger this time, stealing her breath. She gasped, her hand flying to her belly. Are you seriously having a medical drama right now? Marcus snapped. Get it together, we have a guest. Marcus, Gregory said quietly, his tone changed. Perhaps she needs to sit down, she's very pregnant. She's fine, Marcus dismissed. Vivienne, go to your room if you can't handle basic service. You're embarrassing me. The words hit like physical blows. Your room. The small guest room off the kitchen, barely larger than a closet, where Marcus had moved her things 3 months ago. Where she slept alone on a twin bed while he and Delilah occupied the master suite with its California king and ocean views. Vivienne straightened slowly, the soaked napkins in her hands. Excuse me, she whispered, and walked toward the kitchen with as much dignity as she could summon. Behind her she heard Gregory's voice, sharp now. Marcus, how long has your wife been working as household staff? She needs purpose, Marcus replied smoothly. Can't have her sitting around doing nothing, can we? Besides, we're separated. This arrangement works for everyone. Vivienne made it to the small bathroom off the kitchen before her knees gave out. The contractions were real now, coming every 10 minutes. Her water hadn't broken, but the cramping was intensifying. She fumbled for her phone, found the contact labeled Dr. Morrison. Miss Ashford, the private physician answered immediately. Are you in labor? I think so, Vivienne breathed. But not yet, I need 1 more day. The gala is tomorrow, please. Vivienne, if you're in active labor. Give me something, anything. Please, Dr. Morrison, 24 hours, that's all I need. A long pause. I'll send someone to you tonight with medication that might slow things down. But if your water breaks or contractions become regular at 5 minutes apart, you go to the hospital immediately. Understood? Understood. And Vivienne, the doctor's voice softened, it's time to end this. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're proving, enough is enough. You've documented everything you need. Tomorrow, Vivienne promised, tomorrow it all ends. She ended the call and splashed cold water on her face. In the mirror she saw someone she barely recognized, but behind the exhaustion something else flickered. Steel. Resolve. The Ashford blood that had built shipping empires and financial dynasties. Marcus thought he'd married a beautiful, naive girl from a good family with a small trust fund. He'd pursued her aggressively 2 years ago, showering her with attention, making her feel like a queen. The wedding had been fairy tale perfect. The honeymoon in Bora Bora had been dreamlike. And for 6 months, Vivienne had genuinely believed in the fantasy, until she'd started noticing little things. Marcus's interest in her family connections, his questions about her inheritance, the way he'd encouraged her to simplify her life, to let him handle the complex financial matters, to add his name to various accounts for convenience. She'd been naive, yes, but not stupid. When she discovered the affair with Delilah 6 months ago, when Marcus had shown his true colors and turned their home into a humiliation chamber, Vivienne had made a decision. She wouldn't run. She would document. She would wait. And she would make sure that when justice came, it would be absolute. The last 3 months had been a performance, one that would make Marcus pay in every way possible. Financial ruin, social destruction, legal consequences, and the beautiful irony that every cruel word, every humiliation had been his choice, his mistake, his catastrophic failure to see who she really was. A gentle knock on the bathroom door. Miss, a woman's voice unfamiliar. Vivienne opened it to find a young woman in scrubs. Dr. Morrison sent me. I'm Teresa, a private nurse. May I? They went to Vivienne's tiny room, where Teresa did a quick examination, checked vitals and administered medication. This should slow contractions for 24 to 48 hours, she said quietly. But it's not without risks. Are you sure? I'm sure. Teresa nodded, understanding in her eyes. Whatever happens tomorrow, I hope it's worth it. It will be, Vivienne said firmly. I promise you it will be. Morning light filtered through the single window of Vivienne's room, falling across her face like a gentle interrogation. She'd barely slept, each hour marked by the steady rhythm of weakened contractions and the mental preparation for what was coming. The medication had worked, her labor had stalled, giving her the precious time she needed. Today was Saturday. Tonight was the gala. And between this moment and that event, Vivienne had a dozen carefully orchestrated moves to make. She rose slowly, methodically, pulling on the same gray uniform that had become her armor. In the mirror, she pinned her hair back with clinical precision. No makeup, no jewelry, nothing to break character, not yet. The mansion was quiet as she made her way to the kitchen, the early morning stillness deceptive. She knew Marcus and Delilah would sleep until at least 10. They'd been up late after Gregory left. drinking expensive champagne that Vivienne had been forced to serve before being dismissed. But Gregory's visit had changed something. She'd seen it in his eyes, heard it in his careful questions. Gregory Chen was a Harvard Business School graduate, a venture capitalist who'd built his fortune on reading people and situations. He knew something was wrong. Vivienne was counting on it. She prepared breakfast, poached eggs, smoked salmon, fresh squeezed orange juice, the kind of spread that Marcus loved to photograph for social media. As the espresso machine hissed, her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Phase 3 assets mobilized. Legal team standing by. Media package ready for distribution. Westbridge Foundation confirmed your attendance for tonight. Your entrance is scheduled for 8:47 p.m. immediately after Senator Morrison's speech. Your mother has arrived from London. She's staying at the Four Seasons under the agreed alias. Vivienne allowed herself a small smile. Her mother, Margaret Ashford Chen, widow of shipping magnate Robert Chen, whose sister had married into one of Hong Kong's most influential families. Gregory Chen was her cousin, which made his appearance last night far from coincidental. He'd been her eyes and ears, her verification that Marcus was exactly the fraud she'd suspected. The marriage to Marcus had been Vivienne's rebellion, her naive attempt to choose love over family expectations. The Ashfords and Chens had built dynasties on strategic alliances and careful vetting. But Vivienne had wanted something real, something spontaneous. She'd met Marcus at a charity auction, been swept off her feet by his charm, his confidence, his seemingly genuine adoration. Her family had run background checks, of course. Marcus Carter came from a middle-class family in Ohio, had worked his way through state college, had built a small consulting business. Nothing remarkable, but nothing alarming. Ambitious, her mother had said diplomatically, perhaps too ambitious. Vivienne had married him anyway, and her grandmother, bless her soul, had found it amusing enough to play along. The Ashford estate had been left to Vivienne in a trust so complex that it would take a team of lawyers months to unravel, which is exactly what Vivienne had been counting on. Marcus thought the house was his because Vivienne had never corrected him. She'd let him believe his name on the utility bills meant ownership. She'd watched him tell friends about his mansion, never once mentioning that he'd never signed a deed, never paid a cent toward purchase or property taxes. Those came directly from trusts he didn't know existed. The cars in the garage, leased by Ashford Holdings, the family corporation Marcus knew nothing about. The art on the walls, on loan from Vivienne's mother's collection. The furniture, the wine, the smart home technology, all of it tracked, documented, owned by entities that had nothing to do with Marcus Carter. For 2 years, Vivienne had let him play house, and then she got pregnant. That had been unplanned, genuinely so. But the moment she'd seen those 2 pink lines, she'd known she couldn't raise a child in a lie. She'd begun asking questions, paying attention, preparing to come clean and start fresh. That's when she discovered Delilah. The affair had been going on for almost a year. Marcus had an apartment across town, funded by cash he'd been skimming from the joint checking account Vivienne had naively set up. Delilah was a cocktail waitress he'd met at a networking event, ambitious and beautiful and thoroughly convinced. Marcus was a wealthy businessman who was trapped in a marriage to a boring housewife. The confrontation had been ugly. Marcus had turned it around on Vivienne with the skill of a sociopath. She was paranoid, he'd said, crazy with pregnancy hormones, ungrateful for everything he'd provided, and if she didn't like it, she could leave, but she'd leave with nothing because everything was his. "This house is mine," he'd hissed, backing her against the kitchen counter. "This life is mine. You're just decoration that's gotten fat and useless. You want to leave? Go ahead. But you'll be a single mother with no home, no money, nothing. Your family won't take you back. You humiliated them by marrying beneath you. You're stuck, Vivienne, and you're going to play the role I give you or I'll make sure you lose everything." That night, Vivienne had made 3 phone calls. The first to her mother, who'd answered in the middle of a London charity gala and listened in complete silence. The second to her family's law firm, where she'd spent 4 hours in video conference outlining everything. The third to Gregory Chen, her cousin, asking if his offer to help was still open. "What do you need?" Gregory had asked immediately. "I need to know exactly who Marcus Carter is. I need evidence of everything he's done. And then I need him destroyed so thoroughly that he never tries this with another woman. Consider it done." That had been 3 months ago. 3 months of Vivienne playing the role of abused wife, documenting every humiliation, every cruel word, every instance of Marcus flaunting Delilah in their home. 3 months of private investigators, forensic accountants and lawyers building an airtight case. Tonight the performance would end. Marcus emerged around 11, wearing a silk robe that had cost $3,000, a birthday gift from Vivienne back when she still believed in their marriage. Delilah followed minutes later, wearing one of Vivienne's designer dresses from the walk-in closet that she'd been banned from entering. "Coffee," Marcus ordered without greeting. "And call the spa. Delilah needs a full treatment before tonight. Hair, nails, the works." "The gala is formal," Delilah said, examining her reflection in the kitchen's glass-fronted cabinets. "I need to look perfect. We're sitting at the VIP table, aren't we, darling?" Marcus hesitated. "Well, it's complicated, the seating is." "You promised," Delilah's voice turned sharp. "You said we'd be with all the important people. I bought a dress, an expensive dress." "And you'll look stunning," Marcus soothed. "Don't worry, baby, I've got connections. We'll be exactly where we need to be." Vivienne poured coffee with steady hands, though inside she was laughing. Marcus had spent the last 6 weeks trying to secure better seats at the gala, calling in favors, name-dropping. What he didn't know was that his invitations had been deliberately limited. He and Delilah would be seated in the back section, far from the stage, barely visible to the cameras that would be broadcasting the event. Vivienne, on the other hand, would be front and center. "Vivienne," Marcus said, and she turned. "You'll stay here tonight. We won't need you at the event, obviously. Actually, I'm thinking you should move out soon. This arrangement isn't working anymore." Delilah giggled. "Finally, I've been saying that for weeks. She's so depressing, Marcus, just mopey and pregnant and pathetic." Something cold settled in Vivienne's chest. This was it, the final push she'd been waiting for. Witness. Documentation. The camera hidden in the kitchen light fixture was capturing every word. "Move out," Vivienne repeated softly. "Where would I go?" "That's not my problem," Marcus said flatly. "You have a week. Find an apartment, move your things, and get out. You can keep the car, the Honda. I'm feeling generous." The Honda. The 10-year-old sedan that Vivienne had been driving, while Marcus cruised around in the Mercedes and Audi that were both technically leased under her corporate accounts. "What about the baby?" Vivienne asked, playing her role perfectly. "We'll work out custody," Marcus waved dismissively. "Through lawyers, you'll get your weekends or whatever, but this," he gestured around the kitchen, "this is done. You're done here." Delilah clapped her hands together. "Oh, this is wonderful, Marcus. We can finally redecorate. Get rid of all this boring modern stuff and make it glamorous. I'm thinking Baroque, gold accents, maybe some animal prints." "Whatever you want, baby," Marcus said, kissing her temple. Vivienne set down the coffee pot carefully. "May I have that in writing, the eviction terms?" Marcus looked startled. "What?" "In writing, just so I understand exactly what you're asking me to do." His eyes narrowed. "Getting mouthy now? Fine, I'll have my lawyer draft something. You'll sign it, take your payout, say $50,000, and disappear. Sound good?" $50,000. For 2 years of marriage, for her pregnancy, for the home that was actually hers. The audacity would have been funny if it weren't so grotesque. "That sounds fair," Vivienne lied. "Thank you, Marcus." He looked suspicious at her easy agreement, but Delilah was already pulling him toward the stairs, talking about spa appointments and nail colors. They disappeared, leaving Vivienne alone in the kitchen she'd scrubbed, in the house she owned, planning the final act. Her phone buzzed. Her mother. "Darling, the jet is ready if you need immediate extraction. Say the word." Vivienne replied, "No extraction needed. See you at 8:47 p.m. Wear the sapphires." Margaret Ashford-Chen would understand. The sapphires were the Ashford family's statement pieces, a Victorian-era parure worth $8 million, worn only at the most significant occasions. Weddings, coronations, and apparently the complete social annihilation of a con artist. The afternoon crawled by in a strange suspension of time. Vivienne cleaned bathrooms that didn't need cleaning, folded laundry that hadn't been worn, and periodically checked her phone for updates from the team she'd assembled. At 3 p.m., a black SUV pulled into the circular driveway. Vivienne watched from the kitchen window as a woman in a sharp business suit emerged, carrying a leather briefcase. She recognized the visitor immediately, Catherine Walsh, senior partner at Morrison & Associates, one of the most powerful family law firms in the country. The doorbell rang. Marcus answered, his voice carrying through the house. "Can I help you?" "Marcus Carter," Catherine's voice was professionally pleasant. "I'm Catherine Walsh. We have an appointment." "Appointment? I don't think." "Your lawyer scheduled it, regarding the dissolution of your marriage. He mentioned you needed documentation drawn up quickly." Vivienne could almost hear Marcus's brain working. He'd mentioned getting a lawyer to draft papers, but he hadn't actually done it yet. Now one had appeared, conveniently. Of course, Marcus's arrogance wouldn't let him question the gift. "Oh right, yes, come in." They settled in Marcus's study, the room with the mahogany desk and walls lined with books he'd never read. Vivienne knew because she'd bought those books herself, decorating a house she'd never expected to become a prison. Catherine had been Vivienne's choice, not Marcus's, and the documentation she was preparing had nothing to do with what Marcus thought. An hour later, Catherine emerged. She caught Vivienne's eye for just a fraction of a second, gave the tiniest nod and left. Everything was in place. At 6 p.m., Marcus and Delilah began their transformation into gala attendees. Vivienne could hear Delilah squealing with delight, the rustle of expensive fabric, the spray of designer perfume that cost more per ounce than most people's rent. "Vivienne," Marcus called, "come here." She found them in the master bedroom, both dressed now. Marcus in his new tuxedo, looking every inch the successful businessman. Delilah in a champagne-colored gown that probably cost $20,000, purchased, no doubt, with a credit card tied to Vivienne's accounts. Around Delilah's neck was the emerald and diamond necklace from the safe. Vivienne's 27th birthday gift from her grandmother, a piece that had belonged to an Austrian duchess in the 1920s, worth approximately $3 million. "Doesn't she look stunning?" Marcus asked, his arm around Delilah's waist. "Breathtaking," Vivienne said honestly. Delilah would definitely be noticed at the gala, just not in the way she expected. "We'll be home late," Marcus said. "Probably won't see you until tomorrow, and then we'll discuss your moving timeline." "Of course," Vivienne murmured. "Have a wonderful evening." They swept out, leaving behind a cloud of expensive cologne and Delilah's giggles. Vivienne waited until she heard the Audi's engine start, watched the taillights disappear down the tree-lined drive. Then she went to her small room and opened the closet. Hidden behind her maid's uniforms was a garment bag she'd had delivered 3 days ago. Inside was a gown of midnight blue silk, custom-made by a designer whose wait list was typically 2 years long. The Ashford name had accelerated the timeline. Vivienne showered, washing away months of humiliation. She dried her hair, letting the chestnut waves fall naturally around her shoulders. Makeup came next, subtle, elegant, emphasizing her hazel eyes and high cheekbones. The pregnancy glow was real. She looked radiant. The gown fit perfectly, tailored to accommodate her belly while still looking stunning. Empire waist, flowing silk that whispered with movement, a neckline that was elegant without being provocative. She looked like exactly what she was: old money, real power, unquestionable class. At 7:45 p.m., a car arrived. Not a taxi or rideshare, but a Rolls-Royce Phantom with a driver in full livery. The driver opened the door with a respectful bow. "Miss Ashford," he said, "your mother is already at the venue. She asked me to tell you that your entrance is confirmed for 8:47 p.m. Vivienne settled into the leather seat, her hand on her belly. "Let's go show them who I really am." The Westbridge Grand Ballroom was everything Marcus had promised Delilah it would be, and more. Crystal chandeliers the size of compact cars hung from ceiling murals painted by Italian masters. Tables draped in silk housed centerpieces of rare orchids. A string orchestra played Vivaldi in the corner while servers in white gloves circulated with champagne that cost more per bottle than most people's car payments. Marcus felt like a king. He'd arrived 40 minutes ago, Delilah on his arm, both of them swept up in the glamour of it all. Yes, their table was farther back than he'd hoped, practically in the next zip code, but they were here. That's what mattered, and the champagne was free. "This is amazing," Delilah breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the assembled crowd. Senators, tech moguls, celebrities, society matriarchs dripping in jewels that could fund small countries. "Marcus, everyone here is so important." "We're important too," Marcus assured her, though internally he was calculating how to work the room, whose attention to capture, which conversations to infiltrate. This was his chance to break into the real upper echelon of society. A woman in a navy gown glided past their table, and Marcus caught her eye with his most charming smile. She looked right through him as if he were furniture. His smile froze. "Probably just a snob," Delilah said, but her voice had lost some of its enthusiasm. The evening progressed with speeches about philanthropy and community impact. Marcus applauded at appropriate moments, his mind elsewhere. He was mentally drafting the social media posts he'd make tomorrow, photos with strategic name drops, humble brags about giving back, maybe a candid shot of Delilah looking elegant. It was all about the image, the perception of success that would translate to real success. At 8:45 p.m., the MC returned to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, We have a very special acknowledgement to make this evening. The Westbridge Foundation's largest benefactor, whose generosity has funded our children's literacy program, medical research grants, and scholarship funds for the past decade. A woman who prefers to work behind the scenes but whose impact cannot be overstated. Marcus leaned back in his chair, only half listening. Another rich person wanting their ego stroked. Typical. Please join me in welcoming to the stage a woman whose family name has been synonymous with philanthropy for 4 generations, whose personal donations this year alone exceeded $15 million. Miss Vivienne Ashford Chen. The applause was thunderous. Marcus joined in automatically, his brain not yet processing what he'd heard. Then he saw her. The spotlight found Vivienne as she ascended the stage from the front row where Marcus had desperately tried to get seats. She moved with grace despite her pregnancy, her midnight blue gown shimmering under the lights. Her hair was down, styled in elegant waves. She wore a single strand of pearls that Marcus recognized with a jolt. They'd been in the safe, the ones Vivienne had said belonged to her grandmother. But it wasn't just the pearls, it was everything about her, the way she carried herself, the confidence, the easy smile she gave the MC, the fact that every person in this room stood when she reached the podium, a sign of respect he'd never seen at these events. Thank you, Vivienne said into the microphone, her voice clear and strong, not the whisper she'd used in the house, not the submissive murmur. This was command, authority, breeding. I'm honored to be here tonight, though I must admit I'm surprised by the attention. The Westbridge Foundation does the real work. I simply provide resources. Beside Marcus, Delilah had gone pale. Marcus, she whispered, is that. Vivienne has insisted on anonymity for years, the MC continued, reading from notes. But tonight we're celebrating milestone achievements, and we couldn't let this moment pass without recognition. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Ashford Chen's family built the Ashford shipping empire, one of the largest logistics companies in the world. Her great-grandfather helped fund the reconstruction of London after World War II. Her grandmother established the Ashford Charitable Trust, which has distributed over $2 billion to worthy causes. Marcus's champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the table. He didn't notice. His entire world had narrowed to the woman on stage, his wife, the maid he'd humiliated, the worthless woman he'd been planning to discard, who was apparently one of the wealthiest people in the entire country. No, he said aloud, no, that's not possible. In addition to her philanthropy, the MC went on, Miss Ashford Chen is a Harvard Business School graduate, serves on the boards of 5 Fortune 500 companies, and recently completed her executive MBA. She's brilliant, generous, and the epitome of what this foundation stands for. The camera feeds projecting Vivienne's image on massive screens throughout the ballroom showed her smiling graciously, one hand on her very pregnant belly. You're too kind, she said, but I want to take a moment to talk about why this work matters. She launched into a speech about education and opportunity, about breaking cycles of poverty, about giving people tools to build their own success. Marcus heard none of it. His brain was short-circuiting, trying to reconcile the woman on stage with the woman who'd scrubbed his toilets this morning. Ashford, she'd said her maiden name was Ashford, but he'd assumed it was just a normal family, middle class, nothing special. She'd lived in a modest apartment when they met, drove an old car, worked as a project coordinator for a nonprofit. Everything about her had screamed ordinary. Because she'd wanted it too. The realization hit like a freight train. She'd been hiding who she was, and he'd been too arrogant, too self-absorbed to question why a woman with a Harvard MBA was working at a nonprofit for $40,000 a year. Around him, people were talking in excited whispers. He caught fragments. Didn't know she was married. Keeping such a low profile. That gorgeous estate of hers, the one on Millionaire's Row. The estate on Millionaire's Row. Marcus's blood turned to ice. The house he'd been living in. The mansion he'd claimed as his own. The Ashford estate. Named after Vivienne's family, because it had belonged to Vivienne's family. Oh my God, Delilah breathed. Marcus, the house is hers, isn't it? Before Marcus could respond, Vivienne was concluding her speech. I want to announce tonight that the Ashford Charitable Trust will be doubling its contributions to the Westbridge Foundation over the next 5 years. $50 million, dedicated to programs that change lives. The applause was deafening. People were standing again, some wiping away tears. On the screens, the camera zoomed in on Vivienne's face, glowing, confident, powerful. Then her eyes found the camera directly, and Marcus could swear she was looking right at him. I also want to take this moment, Vivienne said, her voice dropping to something more personal, to address a difficult topic. Domestic abuse takes many forms: financial abuse, emotional manipulation, coercive control. Sometimes the prison is a gilded cage. Sometimes the abuser is charming and successful on the outside. Marcus's heart stopped. I've experienced this firsthand, Vivienne continued, and the ballroom went completely silent. For the past 3 months, I've been documenting my own situation, as an experiment, yes, but also as a survivor. I wanted to understand how men like my soon-to-be ex-husband operate, how they manipulate, isolate, and humiliate. The cameras were moving now, scanning the crowd. Marcus tried to shrink into his chair, but it was too late. He felt eyes turning toward him, recognition dawning on faces around the room. Marcus Carter, Vivienne said, and her voice was steel wrapped in silk. Would you please stand? Every head in the ballroom turned. A spotlight swung around, finding their table in the back. Marcus was frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. Stand up, Marcus, Vivienne repeated. Let everyone see the man who forced his 8 months pregnant wife to work as his maid, who moved his mistress into my family home, who told me I was worthless, that I had nothing, that I should be grateful for his generosity in letting me stay under what he believed was his roof. Delilah made a small sound of horror and tried to leave, but security had appeared at their table, blocking exits. Not threatening, just present. You see, Vivienne continued, Marcus thought he'd married someone beneath him, someone without options. He spent 2 years trying to access my family's money, my connections, my resources. When I got pregnant and started asking questions about our finances, he decided to break me instead. On the screens, images appeared. Marcus recognized them with growing horror, screenshots of text messages between him and Delilah, photos of him at the apartment he'd been hiding, credit card statements showing his spending, and worst of all, video footage from inside the house, from multiple angles, high-definition documentation of every cruel word, every humiliation. There was Marcus, telling Vivienne she was fat and useless. There was Delilah, calling her pathetic. There was the moment from just this morning when Marcus had told Vivienne she had 1 week to move out of her own house. Everything you see, Vivienne said quietly, is real, documented, legal evidence of what coercive control looks like when a narcissist thinks he's won. The ballroom was dead silent except for the video-audio playing through the sound system. Marcus's own voice, caught in cruel clarity. This house is mine. This life is mine. You're just decoration that's gotten fat and useless. Someone in the crowd gasped. Others murmured in disgust. Marcus felt his face burning, sweat beading on his forehead. The Ashford estate, Vivienne said, has been in my family for 2 generations. Marcus has never paid a single utility bill. Those come from family trusts. He's never owned any of the cars in the garage, never purchased any of the art on the walls, never contributed to any of the wealth he's been flaunting for 2 years. More images now. Property deeds with Vivienne's name, trust documents, vehicle registrations, all of it proving what she was saying. And Delilah, Vivienne said, turning her attention to Marcus's mistress, who looked ready to faint. That necklace you're wearing, it belonged to an Austrian duchess. It's insured for $3 million, and you're currently on camera wearing stolen property. Delilah's hands flew to the emerald necklace. Around the ballroom, security was moving closer to their table. I want to be clear, Vivienne said, her hand resting on her belly. I'm not sharing this for revenge. I'm sharing this because abusers count on silence. They count on victims being too ashamed, too afraid, too isolated to speak up. Marcus thought I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. He was spectacularly wrong. She paused, letting that sink in. Tonight, I'm filing for divorce. I'm also filing charges for theft, fraud, and coercive control. Delilah will be charged with receiving stolen property and conspiracy. Both of their lawyers will receive full documentation within the hour. Marcus tried to stand, tried to run, but his legs wouldn't work. The video was still playing, now showing him with Delilah in compromising positions, time-stamped and dated, incontrovertible proof of adultery. The Ashford family believes in consequences, Vivienne said. Marcus Carter will leave this evening with exactly what he brought into our marriage, nothing. The prenuptial agreement he thought he'd cleverly convince me not to sign. There was one anyway, drawn up by my family's lawyers without his knowledge. Entirely legal under state law when one party is the sole owner of all marital assets. She smiled then, and it was beautiful and terrifying. Marcus, you wanted my house, my money, my name. You wanted to make me small so you could feel big. Well, congratulations, you got your wish. Everyone knows exactly who you are now. The spotlight was still on Marcus. Cameras were recording his face, the shock, the horror, the dawning realization of complete and utter ruin. This wasn't just a divorce. This was public evisceration. This was his face and his crimes broadcast to everyone who mattered in this city. "Security will escort you from the premises," Vivienne said calmly. "The police are waiting outside to take your statements regarding the theft charges. And Marcus, you're also being sued for fraud, for forging my signature on multiple financial documents, and for attempting to steal from family trusts. My lawyers estimate you'll spend the next 5 to 10 years in litigation. If you're very lucky, you might avoid prison, but you'll definitely spend the rest of your life paying back what you stole." Marcus finally found his voice. "You can't do this. I'll fight you. You'll what?" Vivienne's voice cut across his protests. "Sue me. With what money? The $50,000 in the joint checking account that was actually mine, the credit cards that are already canceled, the lawyer you thought you'd hired who was actually working for me." She leaned into the microphone one last time. "Ladies and gentlemen, let this be a lesson. Abuse can happen to anyone, regardless of wealth or education or background, but it doesn't have to be forever, and abusers should never, ever underestimate the people they try to break." The applause that erupted was shocking in its intensity. People were standing, cheering, some crying. On stage, Vivienne's mother appeared, a regal woman in her 60s, dripping in sapphires, and embraced her daughter. Gregory Chen was there too, and several other people Marcus didn't recognize but who clearly knew and loved Vivienne. Security reached the table. "Mr. Carter, Miss Lockwood, please come with us." Marcus's legs finally worked, but only because security was basically carrying him. Around him, he could hear whispers, cruel laughter, the click of cameras. His face, his humiliation, was being captured from every angle. Delilah was sobbing, trying to unclasp the necklace with shaking hands. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know she was." "Save it for the police," one of the security guards said, not unkindly. They were escorted through a side door, away from the gala, into a stark hallway where 2 police officers waited. The contrast was jarring, from gilded ballroom to institutional fluorescent lighting in seconds. "Marcus Carter," one officer said. "Delilah Lockwood, we need to ask you some questions about property theft and fraud." Behind them, through the closing door, Marcus could hear the gala continuing. The orchestra had resumed. People were talking, laughing. Returning to normal, as if his entire life hadn't just imploded on a stage in front of 500 witnesses. His last glimpse before the door shut completely was of the video screen still displaying Vivienne's triumphant face, one hand on her pregnant belly, surrounded by her real family, her real people, her real power. Everything he'd thought he'd won had been a mirage, and now he had nothing, less than nothing. The police officer was reading him his rights, Delilah was hyperventilating, and Marcus could only think one thing. She'd always known. The whole time, Vivienne had known exactly who she was and what she was doing. She'd played him perfectly, documented everything, and waited for the exact right moment to destroy him. He'd thought he was the predator. He'd been the prey all along. The hospital suite was nothing like the small room Vivienne had been confined to in her own home. Floor to ceiling, windows overlooked the city lights. Fresh flowers perfumed the air, lilies, her favorite. A private nurse monitored her vitals while her mother sat in a plush chair nearby, reading emails on an iPad. It was 3 hours after the gala. Vivienne's water had broken in the car on the way to the hospital. Perfect timing, really, as if her daughter had been waiting for justice to be served before making her entrance. The contractions were manageable now, still 6 minutes apart. They had time. "The media response is extraordinary," Margaret Ashford Chen said, not looking up from her screen. "Every major news outlet has picked up the story. Social media is calling you a hero. There are hashtags, multiple hashtags." Vivienne smiled tiredly. "I'm not a hero, Mother. I'm just a woman who got tired of being walked on." "Darling, you orchestrated the most spectacular takedown I've seen in 40 years of high society." Margaret finally looked up, her ice blue eyes warm with approval. "Your grandmother would have been so proud." The mention of her grandmother, Eleanor Ashford, the formidable matriarch who'd built a shipping empire and taught Vivienne everything about power and grace, brought tears to Vivienne's eyes. Pregnancy hormones, she told herself, but it was more than that. It was relief. It was vindication. It was the end of 3 months in hell. "Has he tried to contact you?" her mother asked carefully. 17 times, Vivienne said, nodding toward her phone on the bedside table. Calls, texts, voicemails, all blocked, all forwarded to the legal team as evidence of harassment. "And the mistress?" Delilah has apparently retained a lawyer and is trying to distance herself from Marcus. Claims she had no idea who I really was, that Marcus told her we were already divorced. Vivienne shrugged. It won't help her. She's on camera admitting she knew I was his wife. She's on camera wearing stolen jewelry. She's going to face consequences. A knock on the door interrupted them. Dr. Morrison entered, the same physician who'd been helping Vivienne through the pregnancy and the nightmare of the last few months. Behind her was Gregory Chen, carrying what looked like legal documents. "How's our patient?" Dr. Morrison asked, checking monitors. "Ready to meet my daughter," Vivienne said, "but apparently she's taking her time just like her mother." Gregory laughed, kissing Vivienne's forehead. "That was the most amazing thing I've ever witnessed. I've been to hostile takeovers that were less brutal." "Tell me everything," Vivienne said. "I want to know what happened after I left." Gregory settled into a chair, grinning. "Well, after security removed Marcus and Delilah, the gala became entirely focused on you. Senator Morrison made an impromptu speech about domestic abuse legislation. 3 other women came forward to share their own stories of financial abuse. Donations to the foundation doubled. You created a movement, Vive." "I created accountability," Vivienne corrected. "There's a difference." "The legal side is particularly satisfying," Gregory continued. "Marcus is currently in a police interview room, and it's not going well for him. We have documentation of him forging your signature on multiple financial documents, attempting to refinance the house, taking out loans against property he didn't own, setting up shell companies in your name. The fraud charges alone could send him to prison for 5 to 7 years. Vivienne absorbed this, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. And the civil suits. The Ashford legal team filed 17 separate lawsuits at 9:17 p.m., Gregory said, consulting his phone. Fraud, theft, breach of fiduciary duty, conversion of assets, emotional distress, defamation. Your lawyers got creative. The total amount you're suing for is $73 million. Margaret made an elegant snort. He doesn't have $73 million. He doesn't have 73,000. That's the point, Mother, Vivienne said softly. The judgments will follow him for life. He'll never be able to rebuild, never be able to scam another woman. Every asset he ever acquires will be immediately garnished. It's financial life imprisonment. Harsh, Dr. Morrison observed, but she was smiling. I approve. Another contraction rippled through Vivienne's abdomen, stronger this time. She breathed through it, focusing on the pain as a reminder that something beautiful was coming. Her daughter, her fresh start, her proof that she could survive anything. What about his business? Vivienne asked once the contraction passed. The consulting firm he claims to run. Gregory's smile turned sharp. Doesn't exist. Or rather, it exists on paper, but it's never had a single legitimate client. Marcus has been living entirely off your money for 2 years, occasionally doing consulting work that was actually just networking at events he attended on your dime. So he's broke, criminally charged, and socially destroyed, Vivienne summarized. Good. Vivienne, her mother said gently, are you sure you want to go through with the public interviews? The media requests are overwhelming. You could let this die down, have your baby in peace. Vivienne shook her head. No, this is bigger than my personal revenge. Do you know how many messages I've received in the last 3 hours? Over 2,000 women, Mother. 2,000 stories of financial abuse of men who isolated them, controlled them, made them feel worthless. If I can give them hope, show them there's a way out, I have to do the interviews. Dr. Morrison squeezed her hand. You're remarkable, and also in active labor now, so let's focus on that for the moment. The next 6 hours were a blur of contractions, breathing exercises, and the strange suspended reality of childbirth. Margaret stayed by Vivienne's side, holding her hand through the worst of it, occasionally reading updates from the legal team. Marcus tried to return to the house, she reported during one rest period between contractions. Security turned him away. He's apparently staying at a motel off the highway. With whose money? Vivienne gasped, then gripped the bed rail as another contraction hit. He maxed out a credit card at the motel front desk, Gregory said from his position in the corner. It was declined. The night manager recognized him from the news and called the police. There's video of him being escorted off the property. It's already viral. Even through the pain, Vivienne smiled. Everything Marcus had built, his image, his reputation, his facade of success, was crumbling in real time, and the world was watching. At 4:47 a.m. on Sunday morning, a leaner Margaret Ashford Chen entered the world with a strong cry and perfect tiny fingers. She weighed 7 pounds, 2 ounces, and had her mother's hazel eyes and her grandmother's stubborn chin. Vivienne held her daughter, exhausted and overwhelmed and completely in love. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Welcome to the world. You're an Ashford. You're going to be so strong." Margaret was crying, actually crying, which Vivienne had seen maybe twice in her life. "She's perfect, darling. Absolutely perfect." "She is," Vivienne agreed. "And she's mine, completely mine. Marcus will never touch her, never manipulate her, never make her feel less than she is." Dr. Morrison handled the paperwork personally, ensuring that the birth certificate listed only Vivienne as the parent. Marcus's name appeared nowhere. In the state's family law, Vivienne was filing for an emergency order terminating his parental rights based on the abuse documentation. Her lawyers were confident it would be granted. As dawn broke over the city, Vivienne lay in the hospital bed with Eleanor sleeping on her chest, feeling peace for the first time in months. Her phone buzzed occasionally, texts from well-wishers, updates from lawyers, but she ignored it all. This moment was hers, her daughter, her freedom, her future. 3 weeks later, Vivienne stood in the study of the Ashford estate. Boxes of Marcus's belongings stacked by the door. The house had been professionally cleaned, sage burned in every room, new locks installed. Every trace of Marcus Carter was being systematically erased. Delilah's belongings had already been removed by police as evidence. The emerald necklace had been returned to the family vault. The rooms that had witnessed so much humiliation were being redecorated, not in Delilah's imagined Baroque with animal prints, but in elegant, comfortable styles that Vivienne actually liked. Eleanor slept in a bassinet nearby, occasionally making the soft squeaking sounds that newborns do. Vivienne couldn't stop looking at her, marveling at how something so perfect had come from such a dark period. Her lawyer, Catherine Walsh, sat across the desk. "The divorce is final. The judge granted it on grounds of adultery, fraud, and abuse. Marcus didn't contest. He can't afford a lawyer, and no one will represent him pro bono after what happened at the gala." "Parental rights?" Vivienne asked. "Terminated. The video evidence of his cruelty, combined with the criminal charges, made it an easy decision. He has no legal claim to Eleanor." Relief washed through Vivienne. "And the criminal cases?" "Marcus has been charged with 17 counts of fraud and theft. Trial is set for 6 months from now. The DA is confident about conviction. The evidence is overwhelming. He's looking at minimum 5 years, possibly 10. And Delilah pled guilty to receiving stolen property and conspiracy. She'll do 18 months in minimum security, followed by probation. She's cooperating fully, testifying against Marcus in exchange for the reduced sentence." Vivienne nodded slowly. It was everything she'd wanted, but the satisfaction was muted now. She wasn't the same woman who'd scrubbed floors in this house 3 weeks ago. That experience had changed her, hardened something that had been too soft, too trusting. "There's one more thing," Catherine said carefully. "Marcus has been trying to reach you through intermediaries. He wants to talk." "Absolutely not." "I told him that would be your response, but Vivienne, he's not well. Apparently he's having a breakdown of some kind. Living in his car, unable to work, completely ostracized. Some people are saying you've gone too far." Vivienne looked at her lawyer with steady eyes. "Some people didn't watch their husband kiss his mistress while they bled from pregnancy complications. Some people didn't clean toilets while 8 months pregnant. Some people didn't hear themselves called worthless, useless, pathetic, fat. Should I go on?" "No," Catherine said quietly. "You're right. I just wanted you to be aware. Marcus made his choices. He thought he could break me, and instead he broke himself. I feel no guilt about that." A knock on the study door interrupted them. Margaret entered, impeccably dressed as always. "Darling, the camera crew is here. Are you ready for the interview?" The interview. Vivienne had agreed to sit down with a major news network to discuss domestic abuse, financial control, and how wealth doesn't protect anyone from becoming a victim. The segment would air in 2 days during prime time, reaching millions of viewers. "I'm ready," Vivienne said, standing carefully. Her body was still recovering from childbirth, but she felt stronger every day. The interview took place in the mansion's library, surrounded by books and soft lighting. The journalist was a woman in her 50s, known for hard-hitting investigations and survivor advocacy. "Thank you for speaking with us," the journalist said. "Let's start with the obvious question: why did you stay? For 3 months you endured treatment that most people would call torture. You could have left at any time. Why didn't you?" Vivienne chose her words carefully. "Because leaving would have made it easy for him. He would have told people I was crazy, dramatic, that I abandoned my marriage. He would have played the victim. I needed documentation. I needed irrefutable proof that what he was doing wasn't a marital disagreement or two sides to every story. I needed the world to see exactly who Marcus Carter is. But at what cost to yourself? A high one, Vivienne admitted. I have trauma from those months that I'm working through with a therapist. There are moments when I still hear his voice telling me I'm worthless. But I also have my daughter, my freedom, and the knowledge that Marcus will never do this to another woman. That's worth it. The interview continued for 2 hours, covering everything. The initial romance, the gradual isolation, the discovery of the affair, the decision to document rather than flee. Vivienne was honest about her privilege, acknowledging that most women don't have family wealth or lawyers on retainer. But the patterns are the same, she emphasized. Rich or poor, educated or not, abuse is abuse, and abusers count on silence. The interview ended with Vivienne holding a leaner, talking about moving forward. I'm rebuilding my life on my terms now. I'm going back to work. I've been appointed CEO of the Ashford Charitable Trust. I'm buying a new house, somewhere without memories. And I'm raising my daughter to know her worth, so she never lets anyone make her feel small. What would you say to Marcus Carter if he were watching this? Vivienne looked directly into the camera. I would say thank you. Thank you for showing me exactly who I don't want to be, how I don't want to treat people, what kind of parent I refuse to become. You tried to break me, and instead you forged me into something stronger. So thank you, Marcus, and goodbye. 6 months later, the trial began. Vivienne didn't attend. She had no need to see Marcus in person ever again. But she followed the proceedings through her legal team, receiving daily updates. The evidence was damning. Video footage, financial records, testimony from Delilah and multiple witnesses. Marcus's public defender did her best, but there was no defense against the truth. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts. The sentencing came a week later, 8 years in federal prison, followed by supervised probation. Additionally, Marcus was ordered to pay $47 million in restitution to Vivienne, money he'd never have, judgments that would follow him forever. Vivienne received the news while sitting in her new home, a beautiful brownstone in a different part of the city, full of light and free from ghosts. Eleanor was 6 months old now, rolling over and laughing, completely unaware of the darkness that had surrounded her conception and birth. It's over, Catherine told her over the phone. He's going to prison. It's really, truly over. Vivienne looked out her window at the park across the street, where mothers pushed strollers and children played on swings. Normal life. The life she'd been fighting to get back to. Good, she said simply. And Catherine, thank you for everything. You did this, Vivienne. You fought back, you won. Had she won? Vivienne wasn't sure victory was the right word. She'd survived. She protected her daughter. She'd ensured Marcus faced consequences. But she'd also lost 2 years of her life to a lie-carried trauma that would take years to fully heal and would forever be that woman from the gala in certain social circles. But she was free, and that was enough. 1 year after the gala, Vivienne published a book. The Golden Cage, a memoir of wealth, abuse, and liberation, became an instant bestseller. She donated all proceeds to domestic violence organizations, establishing shelters and legal aid funds specifically for women facing financial abuse. The book tour took her across the country where she met thousands of women and men who'd survived similar situations. Each story was different, but the patterns were the same. Isolation, control, gaslighting, the systematic dismantling of self-worth. You gave us permission to speak, one woman told her at a book signing in Denver. You showed us that it's not our fault, that we're not crazy, that we can fight back. That made everything worth it. The humiliation, the pain, the months of playing a role that had nearly broken her. Eleanor turned 1 year old on a sunny morning in May. Vivienne threw a small party in her brownstone's garden, just family and close friends, nothing like the elaborate events Marcus used to insist on. Eleanor smashed into her cake with gleeful abandon, frosting in her hair, laughing as her grandmother Margaret tried to clean her face. She's so happy, Margaret observed. You both are. We are, Vivienne agreed, finally. That afternoon, alone in her study after the guests had left, Vivienne received a letter. It had been forwarded through her lawyer, the return address a federal correctional facility. She almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. She broke the seal and unfolded a single page of lined paper. Marcus's handwriting, immediately recognizable. Vivienne, I know you probably won't read this. I know I have no right to contact you, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not because I'm in prison, not because I lost everything, but because I hurt you. Because I was so blind, so arrogant, that I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. I've had a lot of time to think in here, to see myself clearly for maybe the first time in my life. I was cruel. I was abusive. I was everything you called me at the gala and worse. There's no excuse for what I did. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that what you did, exposing me, destroying me, was the best thing that could have happened. I needed to hit rock bottom. I needed to face consequences. I'm in therapy now, working through issues I didn't even know I had. I see pictures of Alina sometimes in the news stories about your foundation work. She's beautiful. She looks like you. I know I have no claim to her and I'm glad. She deserves better than me. She deserves you. I hope you're happy, Vivienne. I hope you found peace. And I hope that one day, years from now, you can think of this time as a brief nightmare that you woke up from. Marcus. Vivienne read the letter twice, then carefully tore it into small pieces and threw it in the trash. Maybe Marcus was sincere. Maybe he'd genuinely changed. Maybe prison and therapy had made him see himself clearly. But it didn't matter. He'd had his chance to be a decent human being, and he'd chosen cruelty instead. She felt no obligation to witness his redemption arc or provide him closure. She had her own life to live, her daughter to raise, her work to do. Looking out at her garden where Alina's birthday decorations still hung from tree branches, Vivienne smiled. The golden cage had been broken. She was free. And the best revenge wasn't Marcus's imprisonment, it was her happiness. She'd rebuilt herself from the ashes of humiliation, stronger and wiser. She'd taken everything he tried to steal and made it her own again. She transformed trauma into purpose, pain into power. Marcus Carter had tried to make her small. Instead, he'd made her legendary. And that, Vivienne thought as she closed the curtains on the past, was justice enough. What would you have done in Vivienne's shoes? Could you have endured 3 months of humiliation, knowing you held all the power but choosing to wait for the perfect moment to strike? This story isn't just about one woman's revenge. It's about every person who's ever been underestimated, controlled, or made to feel worthless by someone who claimed to love them. Vivienne's courage to document her abuse, to stand on that stage and reveal the truth, has inspired millions of women and men to recognize the signs of coercive control in their own lives. Financial abuse is real. Emotional manipulation is real. And the golden cages that trap us can look like mansions from the outside while feeling like prisons on the inside. This story reminds us that justice can prevail, that abusers can face consequences, that speaking up, even when it's terrifying, can change not just your life but countless others. If this story made your blood boil at Marcus's cruelty, or restored your faith that good people can triumph over narcissistic abusers, I need you to do something right now. Drop a like on this video if you're standing with survivors of domestic abuse. Hit that like button if you believe that people like Vivienne deserve to have their stories heard and celebrated. Comment below Justice SERVID if you think Marcus got exactly what he deserved. Or share your own story, whether it's your journey or someone you know who escaped an abusive situation. Your comment could be the encouragement someone else needs to take that first step toward freedom. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. Remember, if you're in an abusive situation right now, you're not alone. Resources are available. You are stronger than you know. And like Vivienne, you have the power to write your own ending. I'll see you in the next one.